Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies, where we explore all things cinema. I want to welcome back to the show Thom Ernst, who is a Toronto-based film critic, broadcaster, and author. He is the former host of television's longest-running film program, Saturday Night at the Movies, and is the author of the memoir, The Wild Boy of Waubamik. I hope I have that right.
Yeah, you do. It takes a bit of practice. Yeah, but yeah, you got it.
I got it. Thom, welcome back. It's been a few years since you've been on. I can't believe it.
Yeah, and is this my third visit or second? I don't remember.
This is your fourth.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
yes,
excellent.
but it's been a while, and I'm kicking myself. I know you got busy with your memoir for a while because I know we were in touch. But time just flies by. But I'm glad you're back, and of course we're discussing your new book, which I ate up. I absolutely adored it. 101 fascinating Canadian film and TV facts. So the traditional first question, which I often ask, is why this book? What was the inspiration behind this book?
I'm proud to say that I had nothing to do with the idea of writing this book, and my publisher and my commissioning editor, Russell Smith, an author, a very good author himself, asked me to write it, and so it was quite an honor, and I feel like a good pat on the back for me to have Dundurn Press ask me to write a book for them. So it's part of a series. There's 101 fascinating facts about hockey, 101 fascinating facts about music, Canadian music, and now coming out soon is 101 fascinating facts about golf. Which I always thought there was only 19 facts about golf.
So, with the exception of the golf one, are those other books also already out, or are they coming out soon as well?
They're out.
Oh, they are out. Okay.
Yeah, mine was the third in the series.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Well, I'll have to get those as well. Now, I mean, this is, how do you go about researching something like this? I imagine it's not just Google 101 facts. I'm sure there was some Googling involved, but can you talk a little bit about the process of how you research this?
Yeah, because first of all, I drained my mind of all the little facts I knew. And then you started to go, are these actual facts, or are these just things I've been told?
Right.
So you get all those written down, and then you start going down rabbit holes, but good rabbit holes, right? You end up in a sort of wonderland sooner than not. And I do what I love doing, which is going to the library, the research library in particular in Toronto, or any library, but the research library is this sort of
it's amazing
place. Yeah. And you go to the fifth floor, which is the top level, and you just start taking out film books. And you start reading little things about film books. And then one thing will lead you to another. So I'll open up and I'll go, well, there's got to be something to put in here about Cronenberg. So let's look up what is said about Cronenberg. And then you start to find authors or papers from people that you know in the industry. So you either call them up or you invite them out for coffee, and then you start saying, okay, so you wrote this paper on this. What can you tell me, that maybe people don't know about, or what little interesting story? One of the reviews of this book that I wrote, somebody said quite honestly that maybe all of these things aren't facts. Some of them are anecdotes, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And I had a great time with that, but another thing I did that I loved is I phoned up people who, were accessible, or even maybe I perceived as not accessible. David Cronenberg's producer, a few other people that my wife knows in the business and that I know in the business, had coffee with them. Directors, screenwriters, producers, just had coffee with them and spent an hour talking film. And there's very, very few people in the industry that don't want to sit down and chat with you.
Right. I like that you are also a character in the book to an extent, because you're right. I mean, you have these great anecdotes, and some of them involve you directly, like meeting Norman Jewison in line in a movie, and Cronenberg's story without giving it away. That you have a great story of being with Cronenberg at a wedding, and things like that. But so you have to narrow it down to 101. I would imagine you probably discovered or thought of or heard of thousands of stories. So how did you narrow it down? Was that a challenging?
There was a
experience?
challenge there. Yeah, but it wasn't a huge, difficult challenge. I will say that there were more than 101 facts that I thought of, but or found. And then how I narrowed it down was I tried to spread the wealth as much as I could among people I knew, among individuals, like cultures. So, I mean, we live in a mosaic here, and we live in a time that's wonderfully so, where voices that haven't been heard throughout cinema are now starting to get louder, and louder is the wrong word, because that sounds like that they're screaming and shoving it in our face. No. Voices from different cultures are now being heard. The door is open. So I try to make sure that we got some indigenous voices, some Inuit voices, women, big directors, little known directors, independent directors. So I try to spread them out that way. Horror films, so different genres. I was very careful of that, and that was my one stipulation. Now the thing is, after the book came out, more facts came to me,
of course,
from people that weren't in the book.
Right.
So what I like to say, you haven't yet to read my memoir.
Yes, I will, definitely.
Yeah, that wasn't a nudge, but I like to say that the first book I point out, people read it and go, "Thank God I'm not mentioning it." And in my second book, they're going, "Why aren't I mentioning it?" So mentioning it. So
was there any sleepless nights, like, oh God, how am I going to leave such and such out, or was it fairly? Were you fairly comfortable with what you included in the end?
Well, I didn't lose sleep over that. I lose sleep over lots of other things. But no, yes, in a way, not to take the analogy, too seriously. But I was concerned about leaving out some friends of mine. But at the same time, I was thinking, I can't really include them. Everyone knows. Let's use Heidi von Palesk, for example, who is a very good friend of mine. And I think a few times in the book at the end, and certainly in my memoir, I think many times, and she's been really, really phenomenal in helping me out with things. And I just thought, well, I can't put her in the book because she's also a Dundurn writer, and I just thought it was too obvious.
I see.
And that I regret. That I think I would dig deeper and make sure that she was included. But other friends, like Valerie Bahagiar or Rick Wong, these guys who I know and like, they got in. But it's because they're not people identify me, I think, a lot with Heidi because we hang out together a lot. And
right.
That's that kind of thing. And then you look and you go, oh my goodness, I completely forgot about Art Hindle. I completely forgot about, this actor and that actor and this producer and director who are giants, or at least not giants, at least worthy of mention. Molly Parker's not in the book. Like it's empty of it. There's so many people in the industry that deserve to be mentioned because they've contributed to Canadian cinema in one way or another.
Well, in a way, Art Hindle is in it because Black Christmas has a chapter.
Yeah.
So
he is, and I think I do actually mention his name.
Yeah, you do.
You'd have to look, but Art Hindle. Yeah, that's. But like you think of guys like the guy from Not Going Down, and not Who Has Seen the Wind, or is it Who Has Seen the Wind? Anyway, there's actors that are really well known in the industry. Maybe Canadians who aren't that well versed in Canadian cinema won't know them, but people who are in the industry are kind of go, well, you don't ever mention this person.
Right.
There's not that many documentaries. There's a handful, but there a lot of documentaries get left out in the cold.
Well, I thought you handled it well, because again, the range of genres you cover, the range of diverse people and cultures, but also and every story is great, and also the way in which you opened it by sort of admitting that there's so many things you can't include, and then how could I not include
Michael Gorman.
So many things. How could I not include this? How can I not include that? But then you are including it by at least saying that. So I thought that was clever.
Thank you. I wondered. I actually wasn't sure that was going to pass the mustard with the editors at Dundurn Press, but yeah, they left it.
That was great.
And I enjoyed that too. But yeah, and then the whole this was, and then I even ranked them, like whether they would be the 102nd, or I even ranked where they would fall if I got to do more. But it was a lot of fun working on it. But I think you can appreciate this, Robert, getting up in the morning and your job is to read about film or to have a talk about film or to write about film, and I was the original draft of this. You talked about making myself a character. That was another thing that originally I buried. So I told these stories as if I wasn't involved, and then my editor Russell would send me notes saying, "Who was this critic you're talking about?" And I go, "Well, it was me." He says, "Say it's you."
Yeah.
And then I was so glad when he said that, because I prefer writing in first person anyway. So
right, yeah, no, I'm glad he did, because it's just that extra personal touch. What were there any surprising things you discovered off the top of your head? I imagine there's a lot of at least some. I know you have a deep knowledge of film in general, Canadian film, but were there some surprising facts that you came up with that really were, you never knew or never thought could be possible?
I never imagined that the term female gaze may have stemmed. I know it stemmed from an article many years ago by a very strong feminist who was responding to the essay on the male gaze, but to actually coin that phrase "female gaze" seemed to get its momentum at TIFF very recently, yes. So that surprised me. Other things that surprised me, I was gobsmacked that Malcolm X's last interview was with the Pierre Burton show here in Toronto.
Wow, yeah, that I didn't know that either. That was a shock. Yeah.
And I have lived my, so let's see, I would have been, because I was watching the Pierre Burton show when I was like 10, 11, very young. So it's been like, for 50 years, I was positive, and I told people this story all the time about how I watched John Lennon and Yoko Ono on the Pierre Burton show. And I wrote a whole chapter on that because I remember, and I just did a little bit of research to get some more details. They did not appear on the Pierre Burton show. They appeared on somebody else's show,
oh, God.
Of which I was able to correct just before I sent in the proofs. But and so that surprised me too. And they sang along with a lot of sort of Canadian, familiar Canadian people and actors and directors and producers and stuff that would visit John and Yoko Ono in their hotel room. Do you remember their? Oh, you won't remember, but you may have heard of their
the Montreal, the bed-in. Yeah, of course.
The bed-in.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get into New York City, so they did it in Montreal. They landed here first in Toronto, but that wasn't going to work out. Went to Montreal, and these group of people sang "War Is Over," that Christmas song.
Yeah.
In that hotel room and recorded it. And that also shocked the heck out of me. I just did not know that happened.
I wonder if the Beatle experts out there knew that. It's hard to say.
I wonder. I know. It's funny. I would hope they did or do, but yeah.
Yeah. If any Beatle experts out there are listening, comment and let us know.
Paul McCartney listens.
Yeah, Paul, Ringo.
Oh yeah, they're both still with us.
Yeah, let us know. But we met the other day for a coffee, and I had mentioned to you that there's a couple of movies you talked about that I'm connected to. One of them was First Round Down.
You're connected to that movie, really?
The Butler brothers. This is a tiny contribution, but I was a background performer on it for a day. I think if you blink, you'll miss me. But it was a fun shoot, and the actor Rom Ramsey, because the scene was him and Dylan Bruce were. We were in a hockey arena, and they had to be shouting at the players, and no one was actually there, but they told us, okay, these are like kids playing hockey, and we're family supporting the teenagers or young children and such. And the scene was that they were screaming at the kids, and like you would at an NHL game maybe, and we had to be giving them looks like, what the hell's wrong with these guys? But the guy, Rob Ramsey, was so funny that I was laughing hysterically. Luckily, I held it together that no one said, you can't laugh. But that was a fun shoot. And the other one was How Heavy This Hammer.
I love that director, yeah.
Yeah. I met him. We spoke briefly. Nice guy, Kazik Radwansky. God, I hope I have that right. Radwansky. Similar. I was actually considered to be to play a waiter in it, I think, and they went with someone else. But then they asked me to play. I mean, it was basically a background part as well. But they were kind enough to credit me, to give me a credit on it. And so same thing. I was like a guy in line as a theater patron they did it at Bloor Cinema, which is now, of course, Hot Docs. I think then this was 10 years ago. I think it was still called Bloor Cinema then. I'm not sure when Hot Docs. But again, just it was interesting to see him work with combination of professionals and unprofessionals, right out of the root of neorealism or French New Wave. So to observe that was great. And the last thing, this isn't a connection, but your story with Norman Jewison, where you couldn't believe he would wait in a lineup to see the wrestler. Like, this is Norman Jewison. As I work part-time at Roy Thompson Hall here in Toronto, which is a venue for TIFF. And I can't remember the movie, but there was a really long lineup. And this man walks right towards me with a couple of people. And he looked at me like, why are you not letting me in? And I said, you have to join the line. You can't just jump the line. He goes, I'm Ivan Reitman. And I didn't recognize him. And I said, well, you can't jump the line.
Oh, really? He's Canadian. He should have known better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I will say he was very polite. And then when I said, well, sorry, you can't. And he said it politely, even though this will not sound like a polite thing to say, but he said, my seat in there, G28 or whatever, I've had that seat since 1994 or something, which is a sort of an ego, a bit of an ego trip. And I just, because it doesn't matter, you can't. I mean, Norman Jewison, I think, deserves, because of all he's done with the CFC and everything. But I'm sort of totally I'm the kind of guy, like, any kind of hierarchy, that kind of stuff puts me off. But when I just said, you can't, and then he asked of someone who was sort of gushing over him, someone who was volunteering, and they took him in, and then my manager came around and said, he can't go in there.
Did your manager know who it was?
He did. Or
Uh-huh.
he either did or he was told. So I don't, and I said, hey, it was, but that's your Jewison story reminded me of my somewhat confrontational one with Reitman.
With Ivan Reitman, which is funny because I remember, and just before coming, honest to goodness, just before coming on with you right now, I was writing something about Ivan Reitman.
There you go.
The late Ivan Reitman.
Yes.
And I remember seeing him at when there was a Chapters bookstore beneath the theater, the Scotiabank Theater, and during the film festival. And I had a few moments before going into the screen. Having a press pass does help because you don't have.
Of course.
So I saw him at the bookstore, magazine stuff, and I looked up. And I kind of smiled, and I kind of looked down to put my magazine back, and then turned around, and he was gone. He knew that I recognized him, and
really?
Yeah, and he knew. And this happened with Spike Lee at the Bay, when the Bay was on corner of Bay and Yonge. And I saw him looking at the clothing rack, off the rack clothes, which isn't a Spike Lee thing, I don't think. But right. And then I looked up, and he could tell that I recognized him, and right. Quickly disappeared. Yeah,
right. I've seen him in Toronto as well. He once did a signing at Indigo, one of the bookstores, and I forget what the book. He had some book on Do the Right Thing.
Yeah, I was just going to say he has a book on Do the Right Thing.
Yeah, and he just briefly spoke beforehand, and he said, "Go Knicks." Which I'm sure the Raptors fans love to hear.
Yeah. But he was doing that to get a rise.
Yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, it was cool to at least have seen him in person. The other thing, with any great film book, this also includes TV. There's a lot of movies mentioned, which with any great film book, you come away with a great, nice to add to your letterbox watch list, if you haven't seen them, that is. So, a number of the films you discussed, I saw, but some I hadn't seen and I had on my watch list. And I thought I'm going to go watch some of these before talking today. And one of them, which I didn't know, Winter Kept Us Warm, which is the first Canadian film to get into Cannes, which I did not know. Just saw that the other night. That's a great film. I heard that they restored it. The Canadian International Pictures did a 4K restoration recently because the print I saw was poor quality. But I'll have to I'm sure it's going to come out on Blu-ray from them sometime down the road. But I mean, talk about ahead of its time in terms of
and a student film, really.
Yeah. Oh yeah. God. Yeah.
I mean, that director had a really interesting non-career, and it seemed to be by choice. It almost seemed to be someone who purposely sabotaged their own film career, because, I mean, he went from that to going to New York, doing sort of underground, almost... you can't say pornographic, but almost sexualized, definitely sexualized films.
Oh, interesting.
Well, yeah, and then that's when his nephew, unbeknownst to his own nephew, rented a film that they thought would be kind of fun and sexy, and realized, oh my God, this is my uncle's film.
Yeah, this is David Secter.
David Secter, yeah, and who's the writer that wrote about him in the Globe? Kind of a right-wing take. He usually has a right-wing take on things. So I was quite surprised that his memory of this film was quite open and quite accepting, because as I understand the film, there's a gay aspect to it that wasn't prominent at the time, these kind of films.
Right.
And that there was a lot of male nudity in it. Am I right in making that assumption?
Well, there wasn't any nudity. Oh wait, no, there was, because there was a shower
scene in the shower.
That's right. What we say when I hear nudity, I think like a love scene or something. But you're right. Yeah, you do see the guys naked in the shower. You're right. Yes.
Because he took him to a bathhouse, which I'm sure in the era that film came out, anyone who wasn't gay probably did not know about bathhouses.
Right.
I mean,
right.
We're talking about the 60s. I was a kid, so I don't know, or early 70s. So that was groundbreaking. But I remember researching people's comments to the film, and one of the comments that kept on coming up over and over and over again is people who clearly didn't get the movie. There were students, but they all went to see it because their friends were naked in the film, and they went, "We got to see this." And
Oh, that's
so,
funny.
yeah. So I remember that, and I'm glad to hear that it holds up. That
It's
it's
great.
still a strong film. Good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, here what I really admired about it was that no one, no one it's nothing is it's not nothing is ever explicitly talked about in terms of the characters being gay or not, but it is so obvious,
Yeah,
particularly the
yeah.
bathhouse. But aside from the bathhouse scene, because these two friends, but the one guy is completely obsessed with the other one, and it's so obvious, and he has a girlfriend, the other guy gets jealous, it gets violent. I mean, I just thought that they're fully fleshed out human beings, where it's not like either in Hollywood things would, as if it was a gay character, it would either be subtle or coded, or it would be so over the top and stereotypical to make fun of them or something. But this, I thought, this is 1965. This is before Boys in the Band, and things like that. I mean, it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Boys in the Band, films like that, I mean, they had the stage
Yes.
production to sort of fall back on. I mean, certainly things were starting to change in the
Yeah.
60s, and cinema took a little while to catch up.
Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking of, there's two films, one with the guy from, we talked about him when we met for coffee as well, the guy from Cabaret, Michael York.
Oh yeah.
Did a film about infiltrating into this family, of which he had sex with absolutely every single family member, including the brother. And that was a kind of and I remember talking to Michael York about that, and the fact that I said, well, was that a difficult thing to do at the time? It didn't really faze him. And as he reminded me, his character in Cabaret was also bisexual.
Yeah.
Right. And so and I went, oh my goodness, because my a family member who was incredibly Christian and incredibly homophobic loved Cabaret, and had that person been alive today, I would say, you know what, that movie you like, So yeah, I wish I could remember the title of that little movie.
That sounds like Teorema, the Pasolini film, but that's not with Michael
Terrence
York.
Stamp.
Yeah, that's Terrence Stamp, but that sounds like a similar plot.
It is the similar plot, and I think it was an American remake.
Oh, I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, I used to know the title, but
yeah, I'll look it up, because that sounds like an interesting film to see. But another one which I only heard about a few years ago, Jesus of Montreal.
Oh, you just heard about that, eh?
I just heard about it a few years ago, because I had a writer on my show. He wrote a book about the history of films that were based on Bible stories. So it's called 100 Bible Films. Really, really good book. And this was one of the films he wrote about, and I thought, oh my God, it's Jesus of, what is that? Jesus of Montreal. And didn't get around to seeing it till the other night. Absolutely brilliant. I mean,
Beautiful,
talk about,
isn't it?
Oh my God. And it just shows how, hypocritical, not to paint, society with one sweeping brush, but, it's common for people to say they believe in a certain religion, but not necessarily, follow the teachings, and I thought they really drove that home.
Yeah.
Beautifully.
That's a beautiful, beautiful film. And of course, it's based on something that happens in Montreal routinely, this passion play.
Right.
And I found it, I remember that came out when I wasn't in Toronto for very long. And I remember there was a woman that I met, and we were friends for a while, and she could not wait to take me to see this film. And it was truly a spectacular eye-opener
Oh yeah.
movie. Yeah.
Yeah, that came out in '89.
Yeah.
Denys Arcand. I hope God. I always am not. When
I would say Denys Arcand.
Arcand, Denis.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And yeah, he wrote it as well. But it's brilliant. The cast too. I mean, the guy who played the actor who plays Jesus in particular. I mean, perfect casting. This is I'm gonna butcher this as well. Lothaire Bluteau. Man, I mean, he could play Jesus in any movie, not just an actor playing.
Well, I mean, the most surprising casting of Jesus for me is Willem Dafoe.
Ah, yeah.
In The Last Temptation of Christ. There, you asked me earlier about shocks, that Canada had anything to do with the making of Last Temptation of Christ. Oh, right,
you have that story.
Just floors me, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I won't spoil it. I will tell people there's a Last Temptation of Christ story in the book as well. The other one was, I love the NFB. Of course, they made so many great films, feature films, and of course documentaries. And the one on Paul Anka, which is like 25 minutes, which is great. Lonely Boy. Mm-hmm. I mean, it when you think of the documentaries of Penny Baker and Robert Drew, and then these people were all starting around at the same time. So I don't know if they knew one another or whatnot, but similar with that verite style, and it's so intimate. I mean, he gets right up close, right into the midst of the action, and I loved it because I love Paul Anka, and to see those young girls. He photographed that and shot it beautifully. The filmmakers, I mean, to see them falling over, crying. I mean, it's breathtaking. It's really good.
That was the one entry I had to sort of put up a little fight to keep in. Because it gets mentioned in the music book.
Oh, I see. I see.
Repeat it, but I convinced them I had a different angle on it, a different take on it, so it stayed in. And also it talks about this documentary that few people have seen about a concert that would have been as big as Woodstock, except it all came in one night here at the Varsity Stadium. That had Alice Cooper in, and it had John Lennon and Yoko Ono. And the reason the story there, again, I'll let people find out, but there's a really interesting reason, and the documentary is amazing.
Yeah, it's great.
And there's a reason why that the problems that music festival had, which is documented in the documentary, that's just phenomenal, and mostly centers around people not believing that these guys were going to get John Lennon.
Yes.
Yeah. And how frustrating that must have been. But yeah. So these are things that was just fun to discover when I was doing the research for them.
Oh, I bet. But the just to mention the filmmakers, again, I'm going to probably butcher this. Wolf Koenig.
Koenig. Koening, correct?
That's right. Yeah. And then Roman Kroitor or Kroitor.
Kroitor.
I'm having a bad day with names.
No. You know what? Names are always, believe me, I've lost many a broadcasting job because of the way I pronounce names. So I make a better writer.
For Canadians, the National Film Board streamer for Canadian taxpayers is free. So you could see this as anything that, so many of their documentaries and short documentaries and feature films are on their streamer. If you're a Canadian taxpayer, you can see it for free or on their YouTube channel.
And also on the public libraries.
Yeah. Oh, there's, that as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if anyone's interested, you can see that there. But again, the book is called 101 Fascinating Canadian Film and TV Facts. I imagine, I don't even know if I should ask authors this anymore because you can find books pretty much anywhere. But is the obvious place, Amazon, places like that to get it?
Yeah, Amazon definitely. I love seeing my books in bookstores because I think a book like 101 Fascinating Film and TV Facts is an impulse buy, right? And so if you see it there, I think, and yes, I really want people to buy the books because yes, I want to make a living writing, and also I enjoy writing it, and I enjoy the fact that people who've never seen Valerie Bahagiar and Don McKellar in Roadkill or
Yeah.
Highway 61.
Another
Yeah,
another thing you wrote about. Yes.
yeah, we'll take in these movies. But
Yeah.
so I encourage people to go to bookstores and say, where can I find this book? And if enough people ask, they're going to bring it in.
Right.
But you can get it at Indigo. I know they have a few copies at a few of the Indigos. I did a sort of a blitz after Christmas to kind of see, and I saw that they were sold out at most bookstores. So I was glad.
Oh, great.
Yeah, but they bring in 2 or 3. So what sold out means, I don't know. But
Right.
if anybody is listening from the Kitchener, Guelph, Elora area, there's a bookstore called Magic Pebbles in the Elora that bought 26 copies.
Oh, great.
And I think they may have sold 2. So I want people to go to Magic Pebbles and buy their copy of 101 Fascinating Facts. They could do it online even, but great little store, and they were really showing me a support. As a matter of fact, we did a launch of the book at the Lorigard Cinema by showing Going Down the Road.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
One of my favorite Canadian films.
You know what? And there are aspects of it that you kind of go, oh my Lord. Like the way they wolf whistle at the woman walking through the factory.
Right.
But, back when that film was made, not saying it was acceptable, but it was acceptable, right? I mean, we look back and we realize, no, that's not acceptable.
Right.
And we kind of cringe when we watch it now. But there was an aspect of it that was just so real and gritty. And you really felt for these guys because, like the Trailer Park Boys, these men in this film acted the best way they knew how.
They knew how, yeah.
Yeah, and exactly. It didn't mean they didn't keep within the realms of the law. They because in their life, you had to sort of break these eggshells to get to the omelet. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's a masterpiece.
I agree.
Yeah, I know. I love it. Absolutely love it. You can follow Thom on social media, on X, or people call it the artist formerly known as Twitter, at Real Thom Ernst. So that's ReelThomErNst. And then on Instagram at Ernst Thom. So I'll leave those in the description box below just to make it a little easier for people to click on and follow Thom. And of course, if you're Canadian, you owe it to the country, to everyone to get it. But film fans, TV fans, will certainly eat this up as well. So Thom, thanks so much. Wonderful, wonderful job. And
thank you, Robert. Thank you for your support. I really appreciate that.
Anytime.
And thank you for what you do for cinema and Canadian cinema. It's appreciated.
Great. Thanks, Thom. And thank you all. Thank you all so much for watching. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link, patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies for full details. You can also leave a donation, or what I call a tip, by clicking the thanks link, which you will find directly below the video frame. Just click on that and you can leave a donation if you choose to. Of course, I would greatly appreciate that. And lastly, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing. It is absolutely free to do so. By pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the movie logo, you will see it floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left. In just a second, just click on that. And then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new videos. I would also really appreciate if you leave a comment, share the video, like the video. All of these things create traction onto my YouTube channel and really help share the video far and wide and the channel in general. So thank you so much for doing that, and I will see you all in the next one.